Aloha, namaste. My name is Janapati Das, and welcome to the Bhagavad Gita class, as it is. The Bhagavad Gita as it is class, I should say. I'd like to offer my respects to you. Thank you very much for tuning in consistently, making comments, making comments. This is a very wonderful time, an auspicious time. We're approaching Janmashtami, the celebration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the appearance of Lord Sri Krishna, and the appearance of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada following the next day. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to engage in Krishna Katha, the hearing and repeating of the pastimes of Krishna, including this Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra right before the battle, and the wisdom thereof. And we've been instructed by our spiritual master, Jagaguru Siddhaswara Banana Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances to. He has instructed us to engage more in hearing about Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna, hearing from the philosophy of his dear Gurudev, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who I also offer my most humble obeisances to. And of course, the most wonderful service that we can do in the service of Lord Sri Krishna is chant his holy names. So please join along. Let's do that right now. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Sira Swarupananda Paramamsa Ijinamine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Sira Swarupananda Paramamsa Ijinamine Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramamsa Namine Golakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Krisayate Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramamsa Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prithate Vaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Advaita Gadadhara Srivasudeva Bhaktavinda Haribo Nitaigo Nitaigo Haribo Haribo Nitaigo Haribo Nitaigo Nitaigo Haribo Nitaigo Nitaigo Haribo Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Haribo. Om Gana Timirandasha Gana Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Unitasmai Shukalave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jaya Srila Prabhupada. So welcome again to Krishna book. My brain not quite on today. The Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are reading. We just read through had a read through in our last class of chapter 3, Karma Yoga, and now we are going to start the verses. So very exciting. This is just lots of fun. Honestly, it would be great if there were more people who were watching this channel and hearing about it, but this is I get a lot of pleasure and happiness from doing this for my spiritual master. So anybody and anyone can hear it, that's great. So, because it is such a wonderful thing. I mean, we spend our time so sort of willy-nilly, kind of like on just very unimportant things in this life. Doom scrolling, they call it, scrolling down the Facebook page, or trying to find that fix, and oh wait, maybe that's it, or watch a little bit of this, watch a little bit of that, and then I'm as guilty as anyone of kind of doing some of these things, but it's really wonderful to take the time to listen to your spiritual master, to hear some chanting of Krishna's names, to hear from the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other scriptures. It's just wonderful. So, text 3, Karma Yoga. Arjuna Uvacha Jayayashi Chet Karmanashte Mata Buddhil Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Gore Mam Niyo Jayashi Keshava. Arjuna Uvacha said, Jayayashi, speaking very highly, Chet, although, Karmana, then fruit of action, Te, your, Mata, opinion, Buddhi, intelligence, Janardan, O Krishna, Tat, therefore, Kim, why, Karmani, in action, Gore, ghastly, Mam, me, Neo Jayashi, engaging me, Keshava, O Krishna. Arjuna said, O Janardan, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare, if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? So Arjuna is listening, and he's putting forth his very intelligent questions, very good questions, and so I love this word, ghastly warfare. It is pretty ghastly, actually. It's pretty intense, millions of people died in this battle. It was just they described it in the Mahabharata as rivers of blood and heads with look like what they call this timgila fish. They were these very shiny little fish, as the earrings from the warriors and their heads cut off, rolling down going rivers of blood. So people were just getting slaughtered and crushed and killed and bombed with the mantra Brahmastras. Pretty intense. So it was a ghastly warfare. But Krishna is being asked, do you think intelligence is better than fruitive work? If you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work, why are you asking me to do this activity? So Krishna hasn't he kind of touched upon it about this idea of doing action in the service of Krishna. And this is what we're getting into here with karma yoga. Karma is a word that means action or activity. So a lot of times we think of a karma as like the thing that you're going to get back. But that's really, the real official word is karmic reaction. So the activity, what kind of reaction we're going to get from acting in this material world, specifically in the service of our own desires, right? But karma yoga, now we have the word yoga. Yoga, right, means the word to connect, and more specifically, to connect with the Supreme. So this is an activities that are done to further attach ourselves in a normal relationship with Krishna. So, because we have to act in this material world. We are active by nature. We are jivatmas. We're not, Vaishnavas. We're not Buddhists, or we're not, Mayavadis who believe that, there is no soul. Or there is nothing. There's no self. That's the Buddhist at least belief. And it's kind of the impersonalist belief, the Mayavadis, because they believe that there's just one energy, that you are God, right? So there is really no self, per se. The self is God, right? So he's asking them, okay, if you think intelligence is better than fruitive work, why are you asking me to do this service? Because I feel like the intelligence, it's an intelligent thing to step out of this battle. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter with a view to deliver his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. So the devotee, Krishna and the spiritual master specifically, cares, is the true well-wisher of all living beings, because as long as there is anyone who is not trying to reinstate their loving relationship, which is the natural, loving, and wonderful, is what we really are aiming for, although we miss the mark so drastically. They see people suffering in the material world, and they feel compassion for those people, even if they are doing things deliberately and sort of arrogantly thinking that maybe serving Krishna is just is a fantasy or not worth the trouble, that it's better if we do it this way. Kind of like what Arjuna was like, I think it's better if we do it this way, my way. But the my way usually creates this suffering all around you. And because the material world is an ocean of material grief. And Krishna wants to help Arjuna understand the truth, the absolute truth, for his own benefit, not for Krishna's benefit, but for Arjuna's benefit, for the living entity who's lost. And so my job as a disciple, my service to my spiritual master, because my spiritual master has asked me exactly what his spiritual master asked him, and so on, back to Krishna. Please engage in this process of sadhana bhakti and likewise help the living entities come back to me, and come back in any way you can, right? In any way that's possible. And sometimes it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to try to encourage people to do this, as we've talked about. And the path of self-realization has been recommended: Buddha Yoga or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. So while the chanting of Krishna's names is important, it's not an inertia. It's not about inertia. In other words, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you want to go off to the forest to avoid doing what I want you to do, which you think is the better way to go. Or, there are many people who want to escape the world and escape material life and go off and live in a peaceful, natural place, which is really, like Arjuna's situation, another form of materialism, material sense desire. I want to go off and live in the peaceful forest. I want to live off get off the grid and live on nature and live with peaceful, sort of like Ralph Waldo Emerson was at Thoreau, Walden Pond, right? I want to live just in nature and just do these things and get away from that, And Krishna's saying you don't need to do that. You don't need to escape the world. In fact, in many cases it's very difficult to do. But even our spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, was living in Vrindavan. Although he was actively trying to give people Krishna, he was living in the birthplace of Krishna. The actual, which all saints and saintly people say you should try to live in Vrindavan. Although our spiritual master also said that wherever you serve your spiritual master, there is Vrindavan. You can be not necessarily geographically in Vrindavan and be in Vrindavan, or you could be geographically in Vrindavan and not really have the spiritual vision to see where you're actually at. Think, this is muddy, there are cows, and it's dirty, and it's not like what I was envisioning in my mind. So, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, yes, he was living, and he remembered the instruction of his spiritual master, who had instructed him, please bring Krishna consciousness to the West. So in his old age, in his 70s, late 70s, an old man left Vrindavan while his godbrothers actually had stuck around and just were doing exactly what's being said here, living in Vrindavan and getting the adoration of people, just living the saintly life, whatever that was. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada left India, went to the United States in the East Coast in the dead of winter with barely any money. On the way, he had a heart attack on a boat that took several months, and almost died. Came in and had to basically try to set up something, and he didn't even know how he was going to do it, and he actually met many failures before he actually had success. But what would he do? He set up his shop. He went to the park with his kartals and started chanting, and few people came by, and then they liked what they were hearing, and he invited them over and made food cooked for them and took care of. They were like, young people, and at the time they were hippies who were disillusioned with these kind of people that just were like, I want to get out, I want to escape the system, and I want to go and do the spiritual thing. But he taught them how to engage themselves. But he was a prime example of what is said here is not an inertia. He basically walked the talk, talked the walk. It was really wonderful. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddha Yoga, or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. So, just like trying to use excuse. Okay, I'm being Krishna conscious by avoiding this fight. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to the best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or working Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Wonderful. So he's asking, and this is the way we inquire about the absolute truth, is approaching a spiritual master and rendering service unto him humbly and putting forth the questions, inquiring from the spiritual master. This is the descending process. We receive the absolute truth coming from above, from our spiritual master. We don't try to speculate our way to the truth. That's the ascending method. We can't climb Krishna. We can probably climb Mount Everest with great difficulty and impossibility, but the mountain doesn't move. Krishna moves. Krishna doesn't want to be climbed. Krishna wants to come to you. And you wants the humble recipient, a person who really, really wants Krishna, to be able to receive that information. Text 2. Vyamishre neva vakyena buddhim mohaya shiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyo apunyam Yamishrena, by equivocal, eva, as, vakyena, words, buddhim, intelligence, mohayashi, bewildering, eva, as, me, my, tat, therefore, ekam, only one, vada, please tell, nishchitya, ascertaining, yena, by which, shreya, real benefit, aham, I, apunyam, may have it. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. Wonderful. He's saying that his intelligence is bewildered, still bewildered. Doesn't have a clear vision of it. So you please, as a student would do it to try to receive the absolute truth without trying to figure it out. He already tried that in chapter 1, and Krishna kind of shot that down. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddha Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without furtive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna therefore wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or active service. In other words, by his question, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is a wonderful process that we find in the Bhagavad Gita and also the Srimad Bhagavatam, receiving our information so that for future generations of spiritual seekers, we'll have a clear path. And this is why also it's very good to have a spiritual master, a living spiritual master, to help guide you through this discourse, because we have so many different kinds of filters, material filters, when we come to spiritual truths. And it's easy to be trying to speculate our way into a certain kind of truth in our minds. Text 3, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Lokeshmin Dvida Nishta, Puraprokta Maya Nanga Gana Yogena Shankyadanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Loke, in this world, Asmin, this, Dvivida, two kinds of, Nishta, faith, Pura, formerly, Prokta, was said, Maya, by me, Anga, O sinless one, Gana Yogena, by the linking process of knowledge, Shankyanam, by the empirical philosophers, Karma Yogena, by the linking process of devotion, Yoginam, of the devotees. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical philosophical speculation, which we know as the ascending process, and others are inclined to know him by devotional work, the descending process. Purport. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Shankya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddha Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Shankya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. But I asked my godbrother Charidas about this one time, if Sankhya Yoga was the same as empirical knowledge, science, because empirical science is very speculative, but actually Sankhya Yoga is much more advanced and really doesn't actually, it delineates the difference between spirit and matter, which empirical knowledge does not do. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord explained also in the 39th verse that by working the principles of Buddha Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. So you probably recall, if you've watched these videos of mine from the past about chapter 2, what was discussed about the senses. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So very wonderful. I've heard this said before, many times before. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism. So you need the philosophical aspect of religion, because otherwise it becomes fanaticism if you just basically said, well, it says it in here, therefore you have to follow it, you know. Well, with philosophy, if you're just discussing stuff without religious practices, without religious guiding, then it's mental speculation, which is what we were talking about. Philosophy is a sort of mental masturbation, just like, well, you know, this, it could be that, it might be this, it might be that, without any kind of real guideposts that religion sort of sets up. Okay, this is the road you take, but philosophy explains more specifically why you take this road. Because if you don't have that why, you're just like, well, take the road because Allah said so, you know. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to this super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, which by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting with everything in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. Why try the hard way? It's like, okay, I want to go to Japan, but I want to take the route to New York, and then, from New York to Amsterdam, and from Amsterdam back to St. Louis, and St. Louis to Tokyo, and why not just take the route straight to Tokyo? It's so much easier. So that's the comparison between the philosophical speculation and the direct devotional work. It's like you're just applying these truths, you listen to your spiritual master, you apply those things. It's very easy and it's a lot of fun, especially when you get together for kirtan. We're about to have a retreat for Janmashtami. It's going to be wonderful. It's lots of fun, and it's very easy and joyfully performed, and much more powerful than like sitting around trying to discuss something and bouncing around with your mental speculation. Text 4. Karmanam anuramban naishkarmyam purusho shnute nacha sanyashanad eva siddhim samadhi gachati. Na without karmanam of the prescribed duties, anarambat non-performance, naishkarmyam freedom from reaction, purusha man, ashnute achieve, na nor, cha also, sanyashanat by renunciation, eva simply, siddhim success, samadhi gachati attain. Translation. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So this is the really wonderful thing when we're talking about renunciation, and more specifically, the analogy I've heard before, is you have these kind of three aspects. You have the materialist who comes across a $20 bill on the ground and is like, looks around, and goes up, grabs it, and he wants to go spend it on something to enjoy. Then there is the renunciate, so-called renunciate, or yogi, who's a renunciate, sees the $20 bill, knows that attachment to money is actually bad, so he walks the other way and leaves the 20 there. And then the bhakta, or devotee of Krishna, sees the $20 bill, understands that it belongs to somebody, and seeks, which is ultimately his father, his Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, and uses that in the service of Krishna because it belongs to him in the first place. So those are when you have the idea of abstaining from work. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, by you avoiding fighting, it's not necessarily true that you will achieve the real freedom from the material world, or liberation, any kind of liberation, freedom from reaction. The reaction to karma will still be there. In fact, it will be there if you are serving me in fighting in this fight. It's in direct service, it's devotional service. So therefore, there is no reaction from this work. It's reactionless. It is true abstaining from desire, work under your desire. And renunciation alone can attain perfection. And when they talk about the renunciation, we're talking about this idea of trying to get away. I'm going to get away from the yucky stuff. That I want to be a spiritual person. You see this all the time, There was a book called Into the Wild, and they made a movie out of it. This guy was like that very much too. He was just completely disgusted by material life, right? He was by modern city life. and there's some validity there, it's just a horrible situation. He was just like, I want to get away from this. So he planned to go off into the forest, but what ultimately happened was that he died because he got stuck out in there and starved to death, or he broke his leg or something like that and couldn't really go anywhere. So this is this renunciate trying to get away from their situation, right, which they don't find enjoyable. So really it's a material desire under the guise of a spiritualism, which in a lot of cases is worse than atheism, in my opinion. Because you're thinking, I'm a very spiritual person because I'm not going to be associating with any of these people. I'm going to close the door, sorry. So, purport. Renounced order of life can be accepted upon being purified by the discharge of the prescribed form of duties which are laid down just to purify the heart of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyasi. So Arjuna, what they were saying is that without the purification process, purifying your karmic reactions, you're engaging in more karmic reactions for your desires. So there is no purification. You can't act like a sannyasi. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayan. So yeah, there was like, okay, because they're basically saying that you can become a sannyasi just by being a sannyasi and you're as good as the Supreme Lord. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. There we go. Lord Krishna, Narayan himself, doesn't approve this. Without purification of the heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the prescribed service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the causes accepted by the Lord, Buddhi Yoga, Svalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties. Nice. Text 5. Nahi kaschit kashanamapi jatu tishtat yakarma krit. Karyate hiyavashya karma sarvaha prakriti jair gunai. Na, nor, he certainly, kashit, anyone, kashanam, even a moment, api also, jatu, even, tishtati, stands, akarmakrit, without doing something, karyati, forced to work, he certainly, avashyaha, helplessly, karma, work, sarvaha, everything, prakriti jahihi, out of the modes of material nature, gunaihi, by the qualities. Translation: all men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So the activity, this is another thing. It's like even the, you have these people like Jains, they're like trying to avoid killing things, so they're sweeping ants out of the way. But you can't even avoid from doing anything. You're always doing something because the Jivatma is active. Even if you're trying to sit in the forest quietly, you're still doing, you're still acting, you're still engaging in action and reaction. So men are forced to act because we are in this material world. We are forced to act by the modes of material nature. Like when we get to the bedtime, we may have a lot of work to do, but we get tired because the mode of ignorance is affecting us, right? we are affected by the modes of passion when we're young, and our hormones are raging. It's almost impossible to control those kinds of things. They just happen, right? And that's why people have children. So, so these things they're constantly happening to us. So the impulses that are born out of the modes, the gunas, the three gunas, the modes of material nature. And Krishna is telling Arjuna, you can't avoid that. So this is where we get to the karma yoga part, right? It is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to always be always active. Without the presence of the supreme soul, the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. Right. So we have this delusion, an illusion that the body is the self because the living entity lends its consciousness to the flesh of the body. And so therefore it very much seems like the body has certain kinds of personality and activity, but it's really the living entity acting through the body itself. Because, you can be seeing someone, if you're a man, you could see a beautiful woman and just think that she's very desirable, but really it's the living entity being attracted to another living entity who is part and parcel of Krishna. So we're really attracted to Krishna, because that same person could have a heart attack on the street and immediately leave their body. And we don't sit there and think, oh, wow, that woman is so beautiful lying there on the ground, just decaying. The body is still the same. The breasts are the same. The body is still nice, and vice versa for women to men. So this is there are a lot of examples. Like, you may love running your hands through someone else's hair on their body, but at the same time they could take a shower and have a bunch of hair on the bottom of the bathtub, and you don't sit up there and go, oh, it's so beautiful and silky and soft. You're just like grossed out because it's not attached to the body anymore. So it is a consciousness that's being lent to the body, the jivatma, that's attractive. And in contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes. And to purify the soul of such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in its natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. The Srimad Bhagavatam affirms this. Tavaktya svadharmam charana bhujam harer bhajan apakvo ta patet tato yadi yatro kva vabhadram abud amushyakim ko varta apo bhajatam svadharmata. If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras nor execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purifications in the Shastras, what does it avail to him if he is not Krishna consciousness? Yeah, like Jesus said, what benefits a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? Similar, What's the point of doing? The point of all the purification is to come to Krishna consciousness. But if you're not doing that for Krishna consciousness, then what's the point? So that's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 5th chapter, 17th verse. So the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas, or any purificatory process, is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure. One more verse here, text 6. Karmendriyani shamyaya yaraste manasha shmarlam indrayarta vimud atma hatva vimud atma Mithyachalaha sa ujate. Karma indriyani, the 5 working sense organs. Samyayam yamya, controlling. Yaha, anyone who. Ashte, remains. Manasha, by mind. Smaram, thinking. Indriyani artha, sense objects. Vimudya, foolish. Atma, soul. Mithya acharaha, pretender. Sa, he, uchyate, is called. Translation, text 6. One who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. That we discussed this verse previously. This is the verse, right? Wonderful. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation, who while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers, but according to this verse, they are the greatest cheaters. So Krishna is telling Arjuna again that you could go off to the forest, be acting a certain way, and still be thinking about material sense. In this case, it is material sense enjoyment, what he was wanting to do. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi, while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification, must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. And there are many religious people who are like this. I say it again, they are the greatest cheaters. And, even though I'm a defender of religious practices and the right for people to do and how great it is, and it's better than atheism by any means, if you're a person and you are using the cloak of your religion, which many, many religious people have done, to try to get sense enjoyment by manipulating naive followers, then that there's a special place in hell for you. I tell you, it's better to be an atheist. At least you're honest about what you believe in and what you're trying to do. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. His knowledge has no value because the effect of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore a show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. So not only is it really offensive to Krishna, and Krishna is very displeased with such people, but they have no power to and actually it's many cases the blind leading the blind. People want to be deluded. They want to follow such rascals because they're rascals themselves. And they probably want to be just like the guru up on the sea. So I think we're going to end there. That was 6 text. It was, maybe we'll read this next one because this sort of goes with we'll read the text 7. Yash tavalindrani manasha yasniyam yarabhyate juna karmendriyahi karma yogam ashakta sa vishishyate. One who. 2, but indriyani, senses. Manasa, by the mind. Niyamya, regulating. Arbate, begins. Arjuna, O Arjuna. Karma indriyahi, by the active sense organs. Karma yogam, devotion. Ashaktaha, without attachment. Sa, he. Vishyate, by far the better. Translation. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. So there Krishna is answering the question. Acting, utilizing, basically reiterating and what he said in chapter 2, utilizing your senses and your mind in the service of Krishna is the best way to go. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. So you could be a seemingly just what looks like an average Joe. You know, I mean, many people think of, and they're deluded by such people who dress very spiritually. They have that shaved head and glittering eyes and nice beard, and they talk very, you know, very whatever, like, you know, and people are like thinking this is what a spiritual person is. I remember one of my godbrothers, who's just kind of one of these average Joe, but he's such an advanced devotee that, you know, I offer my respects to him. He has a spiritual name, and you know, he's a disciple of our Guru Dev, my godbrother, and it was advertised that he was going to speak, but he's a white guy. He's probably, you know, like almost 70 now, and he's, you know, just kind of like rough tuck, kind of redneck sort of like looking guy, the cap, and he works a lot in labor and electrical engineering and electrical wiring and whatnot. And so, you know, what you wouldn't think as being a yogi, but he's a true yogi because he's very nice devotee of Krishna, and he follows our spiritual master's instructions. And he was instructed to speak, and there was some hippie, this was like up in Northern California, there were the hippie, Humboldty type of people, and he was speaking, and this gentleman in the back was, you know, with a long hair and a beard, he was like, when is so-and-so Das, I'm not going to use my godbrother's name, but when is so-and-so Das going to be speaking? And he said, well, that's me. And the guy got up and left because he was thinking it would be like some Indian guy, right, Indian body, and just like some vision that he had, you know. And so this could be, so it's better, and he, you know, so what is really being said here is that just like Krishna is telling Arjuna to go fight, as, you know, this is much better to be this way than to be a pretender yogi living off the forest, doing what you want and what you think is spiritual, but not serving me, not serving your spiritual master. And so there are two people who can actually be doing the same thing. One could be doing it materialistically, like the materialist, and then one could be the devotee of Krishna and doing the same activities, but engaging his activities in the service of Krishna. And so physically, I mean, from a visual sort of perspective, they could be in an American body, they could be white, they could be a man or a woman, they could just look maybe not physically attractive, but they could be the highest status of devotion because of their Krishna loves them so much because of what they do for their spiritual master. So that's what's being said here, and it's related to our own life of just applying our activities in our life in the service of Krishna, no matter what we do, no matter where we come from, and what our whether we're a warrior or not, whether we're a teacher or anything, we engage our karmic activities in the service of Krishna. Such a sincere person who follows this method is better situated than a false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. And there are lots of people like that. You know, you can just open your TikTok and Instagram and you see these crystal power, you know, like angelic angel wings, you know. It's just like they're just like got all these followers, and they're reading the tarot cards and their crystal power, and then, you know, it's just pretty funny. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living, right? they're making money, right? But you could be just some Joe, on the sweeping the garbage, and you're offering your service and your money to Krishna, and you're chanting Krishna's names, and but your job just happens to be a sweeper, but you're a devotee of Krishna, and it's just very wonderful. Yeah, so that's being said, though. So we'll end that for today and pick up where we left off next time. Thank you very much. Haribol.